Did you know that these doors can only be opened from the inside? I don't think they were always like that, but they're like that now. I just think that's a great metaphor for us as a church. Well, this midweek message is coming to you from inside. They are. I'm used to seeing the sanctuary like this. I see it during the normal part of a week, even before the coronavirus shutdown. But it may seem different for you if you're here usually on Sundays and it's full of people, full of music, friendly faces, people running around, and now it's empty. It's been 52 days now since we've been worshiping from home, worshiping from via YouTube. 50 some days. 7 Sundays. It's important for us as a people of God. It's important for us as followers of Christ, followers of God, who aren't the first ones, that we are one generation of people in many, many generations of people that God has called to be His people. To put this little bit of history that we've had over these 50 days or so since we've known about this disease, to put it into the bigger context of our life as a people of faith. I was thinking of the experience of the Israelites 500 and some years before Jesus, when they were taken into exile by the Babylonian Empire. And that's maybe the experience that you have a little bit of being in exile from this place that you love, this place that is so meaningful, this place which has given so much to you. You may feel that you're in exile. Now, to put in a little context, we've been not meeting for 50 days. The Israelites, they weren't together. They were exiled from their place, from Jerusalem, for 70 years. And so we can put that just a little bit of context, and it may make things a little bit easier. That it may feel like forever, but it's not forever. And it won't be forever. And yet the experience is the same. And I think we can learn about ourselves and learn about God from the experience that the Israelites had. I think the experience is the same, is that there is somewhat of a trauma about it, of not being able to go where you want to go, of not being able to gather with those you want to gather. And Zoom is not the same as being in person. Like the Israelites who were shipped out of Jerusalem and all those small towns in Israel over the rivers into Babylon, we too are separated. We're separated from the places that we love, that give us meaning. We're separated from families, or maybe we're separated, even some of us, from our homes. It's a little bit different for us, but the Israelites, there would be many of them who would never return. They would die in Babylon. And there would be generations born in that country, generations of Israelites who never knew their homeland, who would never go there, who felt more at home in the cities of Babylon than they ever would in the city of Jerusalem. They too missed a building, the building that they not just left behind, but which they lost forever, which was completely lost to history because it was destroyed, was the Temple of Solomon. And the Temple of Solomon was one of the wonders of the ancient world, just overlaid with gold. It was a magnificent structure. It was a place of great pride and of great inspiration for those who would go to offer sacrifices and to worship there. And those who were taken away into exile would never see that temple again. Even if they came back after 70 years, they would never see that temple again. Well, I can pretty much guarantee you that this place is going to be here when you come back. It's going to be standing. There's not the whole lot has changed. Actually, it's gotten a little better. Ken has waxed some of the floors. It'll look a little nicer. But the feeling of exile, of being apart from the place that we love, is the same. It's the same. It's a time of grief. It can be a time of questioning, what will it be like to come back? Will there be the same people? Will those who are vulnerable, will they be able to join us? Will we be able to sing? That's the part that I actually miss the most. Is not being able to sing together. You know, in one of the psalms that was written in Babylon is Psalm 137, and it is a psalm of heart-rending grief. The people had the experience there of being asked, hey, why don't you sing one of the songs of your homeland? They said, we can't do it. We took our harps and we went down to the river and we just hung our harps on the trees because we couldn't play them. They said, how can we sing the songs of the Lord in a foreign land? And that's kind of what it feels like here, is how can we sing the songs of the Lord when we are apart? When we're apart not from a building, but from those we love. So I don't know if singing is going to be part of our history or a part of our near future as we go on together. There's just a lot of questions that we still have, and that we'll have for quite a while. One of the prophets that spoke to the people of Israel during this time was Jeremiah. A prophet is someone who has a word from the Lord when the people need it. And sometimes that word is heeded, sometimes it's welcomed, but very often it's not. And Jeremiah's words were not heeded and not welcomed by the people often. And yet we are glad that they were written down and that the Spirit preserved them for us. Because Jeremiah said this to the people. He said, first of all, you're going to be there for 70 years. You're going to be in Babylon for 70 years. And so get used to it. Get used to it. But not just get used to it, but see it as a way of being the people of God in a new place. Jeremiah wrote this to the people of God, saying, "This is the word of the Lord to you. The word of the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says to those I carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon, build houses and settle down, plant gardens and eat what they produce. Marry and have sons and daughters, and find wives for your sons, and give your daughters in marriage, so that they may have sons and daughters too. Increase in number, don't decrease." Don't see this time as a time of of decreasing, a time of being without. But he says, see this time as a time to grow, not just in number, but in soul as well. Because goes on and says this, also, seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. Yes, this is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. You know, we may not be in exile the same way that the Israelites were, and yet I think we can heed these words of Jeremiah to seek the shalom, the peace and the welfare of where we are now. And that might be not necessarily the city, because we might not be able to go out into it, but to seek your own welfare and the welfare of your family. Seek the welfare of your soul, kind of where you are right now. It was true that the Israelites experienced God as being in this temple of that Solomon built. But God was everywhere too. It's just that in the temple, they were more aware of God's presence. They were more expectant that God would be here. Maybe you had that sense too, that God's in this place with the stained glass windows and this high ceiling in which our eyes are drawn up to God. But God's everywhere too, and I hope that you have experienced that, and I hope that you're aware of that, of how God is with you when you're at home, when you're sitting in your easy chair, when you're worshiping with one or two other people, that God is there as well, that God is present everywhere. Well, Jeremiah did promise the people that they would return. He said it's going to take 70 years. It's going to take a couple of generations being born and some dying before you are able to return, before God brings you back. That's God's promise to you. And I think we can say that too, that God hasn't left us, that God has promised that we too will come back together as a congregation, as other churches will. But he says, before you focus on that, before you have your eyes set 70 years down the road, make sure your eyes are set on today and on where you are. To learn to be the people of God in this place and in your present moment. To learn to be the people of God, not here in the building, but out there, wherever that is for you. At home, with your neighbor, to be the people of God out there. God says, then, after you've learned that, you will return. So I hope that when we are able to gather again in whatever form that is, maybe starting in small groups and eventually coming back together as our whole congregation, that when we come back, we'll recognize God's presence here. We will maybe even have a special experience of God's presence in our midst as the body gathers again, but that we won't forget that wherever we were, in whatever form the body was during these days, that God was present with us as well, and that we were God's people, and that we had given ourselves to the welfare and the peace and the shalom and the blessing of this community. Church, you have always been the church, dispersed, gathered in this place or sitting in your living room. You are always the church, not because of this building, but because Christ has called you. So I look forward to gathering again. But I hope that in between now and that time, that you will have the experience of being God's people everywhere that you are. I'll see you soon, church, and the blessings of God be upon you.